this call also. Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our national call today, where we'll talk about the proposed amendments to the national statute. This is Lauren Howe speaking from the Slow Food USA National Office based in Denver, Colorado. For those of you who I have not met, I am our Manager of Community Engagement, and I'll be facilitating the administration of this call, but we will actually have the call be led by one of our fearless leaders, Tiffany Nurenburn from California. Tiffany has been a Slow Food member since Slow Food Nation in 2008. She has been a chapter leader with Slow Food Russian River just north of the Bay from 2010 to 2016. She was instrumental in the formation of the Slow Food California state chapter in 2012 and has been board president of Slow Food California since 2013. She certainly has experience in the statute world, as she was a delegate to the Slow Food USA National Congress in Louisville in 2012. And she currently resides in San Francisco, where her life's work is really making slow food principles a reality in her state. She has worked for Roots of Change for 5 years, helping to forge sustainable food policies in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego, and is the founding director of the California Food Policy Council. She helped to start the Farmers Guild in California, and is also a consultant on projects, currently working on the Better Burger Challenge with Friends of the Earth and supporting a slow food restaurant called Namugaji, also in San Francisco. So we are really thrilled and grateful to have Tiffany's expertise and time as she is going to lead us through this call. So just another quick reminder, quick housekeeping. If you could please, if you're dialing in from a phone, mute yourself, or if you're using GoToMeeting, if you could also mute yourself, it'd be great just to keep background noise down for our presenter. And if you have questions, please use the chat function. We will be reserving about 20 minutes at the end for Q&A, but we're going to use the next 20 to 30 minutes or so to go through some of the background context of the statute as well as the amendments themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, and Tiffany, you are on.
Great, thank you, Lauren. So welcome, everybody. We are here today to talk about, as Lauren has said, amendments to the national statute. So our national statute is the governing document for Slow Food USA and all of the chapters that comprise the network. Traditionally, that guiding document has been revised or reviewed in advance of national congresses. So the last time we really took an in-depth look at the statute was in advance of the Louisville National Congress in 2012. So we decided that now was a great time, both in lieu of it being about 4 to 5 years after that, but also as Slow Food USA has gone through its strategic planning process, wanted to make sure that the governing documents really reflected the changes that had come about through that work, and was an accurate portrayal of how making sure that the policy is actually matching up with how we are working in the real world. So before we get started, I want to say thank you to all of the people who have been involved in this process. Lauren, who has jumped in to really support us more recently. Megan Larmer, who started this process midway through 2016. There was a working group established with kind of representatives from different levels of leadership, including Joel Smith, who's on the board of directors, has previously served as Midwest governor and long-term chapter leader. Bernadette Dryden, who's a long-term leader with Slow Food Katy Trail, and Jennifer Casey, who's a Wisconsin state governor and longtime leader. Also a special thank you to Charity Kenyon, who has jumped in throughout the process to advise both on the statute, but also making sure that what we have in the USA document is in line with the international statute. So a big thank you to everybody there. And we started this process, like I said, about 6 months ago and looked through the statute and tried to both make some administrative changes, which you'll see as we go throughout, and also some substantive changes that relate to how the network is working. You will have an old version of the national statute is available on the Slow Food USA website, and we'll be receiving the new updated version. Also, throughout the document, there are references to the chapter handbook, the Slow Food USA guiding principles. All of these are available on the Slow Food website as well. If you want to get to the statute or the guiding principles, you go to Slow Food USA, About, and then Documents, Governance, and then Documents, and that's where all of these items live. So, yeah, so also just to note that after an initial round of changes, the Slow Food Board did look at these items in September and has been very supportive of this process as it has continued to evolve. So let's see, Lauren, do we want to go ahead and trying to look at your screen and my screen? Great. So the first part actually goes through just the general amendments that we're asking to make. So there are 11 proposed amendments and also just some general some general language changes. But primarily what we were trying to do, you'll see that throughout the document, President has been replaced with Executive Director to reflect the current staff titles. You'll see things like Regional Governor being replaced with State Governor to reflect some current titles. We'll talk more about that later. Updating the mission statement, redrafting the preamble to make sure that it's reflective of how we're functioning post-strategic planning, including leaders in the conversation, kind of streamlining the ways in which we deal with slow food on-campus chapters, changing some titles around with national working groups and governors, updating our chapter requirements, and including a national congress as a part of our regular review of our principles. So we'll start with, say, Amendment 1. We'll just briefly glance at that because this is, again, mostly just about replacing president in every instance with executive director, regional governor, in every instance with state governor. So nothing too exciting there. Amendment 2 is redrafting the mission statement to reflect the new strategic plan. So you can see there it was a very minor change, but have kind of streamlined the early language and added the sentence, "We work to inspire individuals and communities to change the world through food that is good, clean, and fair." So definitely reflecting the inspiration as a significant part of our role. Let's see. Then the next one is redrafting the preamble. So the primary change here in terms of language is to include a paragraph that says that the purpose of the corporation is to promote the slow food movement in the USA by facilitating and growing individual engagement in the movement, organizing gatherings of the Slow Food Network, directing campaigns to spread the slow food message, and building solidarity through partnerships with organizational entities, both internal and external to the Slow Food Network. And I feel like this section was really, it really captures succinctly the outcomes of the strategic planning and helps to describe what our purpose is as a national organization. Okay. And then we'll get down to the meat here in terms of, if we could go, you're already there. Adding champions as recognized organizational entities. So as we work to grow and expand our network, some of the decisions during the strategic planning really worked with kind of decoupling chapter membership with the ability to be a recognized leader in the slow food universe. For a number of reasons, if folks don't have a local chapter or noticing how many people wanted to be a part of the work without actually taking that step, decided to make this a more inclusive network and give them an official place in the world in which we operate. So choosing not to use the word leaders to create confusion, created a new category of participants in the network. And a champion, as it's defined here, is a volunteer who engages others to join the slow food movement. He or she does that any combination of the following ways: organizing around slow food campaigns, participating in slow food projects, for example, the Presidia, Arc of Taste, Slow Meat, can serve on a chapter leadership team, or serves the organization in any of the roles described in Articles 2 through 9, which are going to be governors, board of directors, etc. So I feel very strongly that this gives a new way for people to engage that doesn't limit them based on their geography. And just to make sure that with this new status, as well as with our current leadership status, want to make sure that there's always a way to incentivize and encourage people, but if someone becomes a challenge, making sure that there's a mechanism to deal with that challenge. So there is an article that is included in terms of revocation of champion status. So an individual member may lose his or her champion status if behavior or activities are in clear conflict with the principles and aims of slow food. Chapter leaders and/or state governors may recommend to the executive director that someone in their area be disallowed from participating as a champion in their area. After due investigation, the executive director may revoke a champion status. So of course, articles like this are hopefully worst case scenario type things. So we don't anticipate having a lot of this, but always want to make sure that there's a mechanism just in case. And we'll see later in the document as we look at chapter leaders, it does refer back up to this section. So this is also the same process by which if there is a chapter leader who is too much of a challenge and not reflecting slow food principles, the same mechanism would go into effect.
Thanks, Tiffany. I just want to interrupt for 1 second just to remind folks to please mute yourself. There's quite a bit of background noise coming from someone, so if you could please mute yourself, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to Amendment 5. There we go. So this is about redrafting the definition of chapters to reflect the strategic direction, especially insofar as explicitly calling on chapters to include diverse participants, separating administration of membership from chapter duties, and highlighting the chapter's ability to raise and disperse local funds. So as going through the strategic process, really looking at what makes a chapter special, and our chapters are the hub of local organizing work, and really creating place-based solutions that are able to be spread throughout the network as appropriate. And one of the things that really distinguishes a chapter and a chapter leader from just general champions is that the chapter has the ability to raise and disperse funds under the slow food name. So I wanted to make sure that that was called out specifically as the right of our chapter leaders. So we'll scroll through. There's a number of just administrative changes that you will see that includes, I'm scrolling down here, sorry. Let's see. Defines the chapter as the legally recognized entity of slow food that persists over time in a particular place with the power to raise and distribute funds under Slow Food USA's 501c3. Some administrative work about how campus chapters are formed slightly differently. Let's see. And then I think that the main changes to look at in this document are both how we define a chapter leadership team. So I just want to highlight that. A chapter leadership team needs to include a minimum of 3 leaders. So there has to be significant enthusiasm and support to create the chapter. And the hope is that those leaders have certain positions that they fill, including chair, vice chair, treasurer, and that then one of those people, the treasurer, are going to be a liaison to the national office. So we can combine those concurrently so that there are multiple people holding, one person may hold multiple roles within that. And hopefully people don't see this as a restriction. This is the bare minimum, not the maximum of number of people that you could have as a part of your leadership team. Obviously, many chapters find it helpful to have a membership chair or an events chair or a social justice chair, whatever is working for you in your community. This is not meant to be a prohibition too. So anyone can use different titles as long as the roles of these responsibilities are fulfilled, and that leaders are registered with the national office so that they are accountable for the execution of these responsibilities. And then one additional thing to call out in this section is something that has been a part of the national statute, very in part of the international, is that chapters themselves do not have the authority to establish any form of local membership dues. So the chapters are able to raise funds and distribute those funds. The mechanism for doing that should not be an additional layer of dues that people are paying. And that's a long-standing tenet. Okay. Some of the other changes are mostly about, again, changing state governor titles and referring to the Slow Food USA chapter handbook, which again can be found on the Leader Resources page of Slow Food USA. The next section is just, there is some discussion of how a chapter dissolves, and the significant change around how a chapter dissolves has to do just spelling out what's the mechanism for doing that. So if a chapter needs to close, if they choose to do that for any reason, and that is determined by a majority vote of the existing leaders serving on the leadership team, the steps for closing a chapter in this way are to, 1, notify the national office in writing of the intent to close and the reasons for this addition. 2, notifying the IRS of the dissolution of the chapter. And 3, closing the chapter bank account and sending any remaining funds therein to the national office in the form of a check. There's also a provision that we've seen happen more often than not in California, where in lieu of closing, a chapter can choose to merge with another nearby chapter and combine financial resources. So in the instance of, let's say, Gold Country in San Francisco, when a significant amount of the leadership needed to move, instead of closing the chapter and sending the funds back to national, they chose to transition their members to one of the nearest local chapters, Slow Food Sacramento. So they became part and parcel of that group so that their members and leaders had a new home. So that is an option under the current national statute. There's some administrative changes along to the chapter leadership powers and chapter leadership duties. But the main change that you'll see in the chapter leadership duties is the removal of the requirement to have an annual membership meeting. So as through the strategic planning process, like we said, we worked through to decouple membership with active participation in the network. So that was an effort also to reduce the administrative burden that chapters felt for maintaining membership and really being the people who had to police membership in their local community. Now chapters are freed from that burden, so it didn't necessarily make sense to require an annual members meeting when what we're looking to do is to bring new people into the equation. So instead now, there is the requirement to convene at least one event that is free and open to the public annually. On a couple of the chapters here in California, knowing that this might be coming down the way, have decided to pilot that effort. And in some cases, it has been a new event that is free and open to the public that is designed to engage members of the community. And other places, it has changed that what was the annual membership meeting to make it open to people who are not members and use that as a tool to recruit new folks into the work. So there's a lot of ways that you can actually manifest this requirement in the community, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how that plays out across the nation. We do still need to report on chapter activity and seek feedback from Slow Food members in our community. So there's also, you'll see in provision 6, there is a requirement still to gather feedback from the members of the community and have those people vote on our new and renewing chapter leaders. It just doesn't have to be in the traditional annual members meeting. You can do this as a part of your large free event. You can do this at a members meeting, or you can also do this online, whatever makes sense for you and your community. And then one other thing to note, it's not listed here, but you will see an omission from past national statutes. It used to be that any leader of a chapter leadership team was required to be a dues-paying member to Slow Food USA, and that restriction has been removed. So while nobody is saying that we don't highly encourage our leaders to contribute to the national and international organization through paying dues and to help signify their commitment through contributing of their financial resources, we don't want that to be a barrier for people who feel compelled to be a part of the Slow Food Network, but might not have the resources to be able to do that. So, so that has actually been, the dues paying membership has been removed as a requirement. Let's see. The next amendment reflects Slow Food on Campus chapters. So it's just removing the article that specifies how Slow Food on Campus chapters are organized. The national office's decision in terms of the strategic planning and kind of reorganizing to provide the best support to all chapters, it just makes sense to treat campus chapters in the same way as all chapters have been in terms of how they're being supported and encouraged. All right. The next amendment is about redrafting the national working groups.
Sorry, Tiffany, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yes, please do.
Just a quick note about campus chapters. I know that we have some chapter leaders on the line today that may work with a local college or university in your area. You might liaise closely with a campus chapter. Slow Food USA in the past has tried to do network surveys to figure out exactly how many campus chapters are functioning, but because student turnover is pretty high and there's not always continuity in leadership, we know that there are campus chapters that are operating that we just haven't been in touch with. So if you are in the advantageous position of working with one closely, please encourage them to reach out to the national office. They can email chapters@slowfoodusa.org, just so they know that they are part of this larger network of chapters. They are still required to do things that other chapters must do, such as submitting an annual report. Fortunately, campus chapters do not have to file taxes since they do not get their own EIN number, but rather function under their university nonprofit status, but we still want to be in touch with them about the events they're hosting and make sure all of their student leaders are on leader links and that they're completing their annual report. So if you work with a local campus chapter, please just encourage them to reach out to the national office so we can make sure they're in our database. Tiffany, I'll hand it back to you.
Great, thanks. So bear with us, we're more than halfway through at this point, so we'll keep moving and get to the point where you can ask questions and participate. The next amendment is also, again, primarily administrative changes in terms of changing titles as we redraft the definition of the national working groups. Also, as you'll see through these next sections, really looking to have our governors, who are our leaders in states, having a slightly less administrative role. So that really comes to fruition in amendment number 8, is redrafting the definition of state governors to reflect the role as it's been redefined and approved by the existing state governors. So there's a number of changes in this amendment that were all worked on by the governors as a whole to make sure that, like, as we've talked about before, that the job description accurately reflects what our regional governors are doing, and also making sure that it's, instead of just a list of duties, there's also all of the benefits that you get from becoming a regional governor. And I'll just put out a little pitch here for those that are on the call. I've been lucky enough to kind of act as an interim governor for 2 regions in our state, and participate on ongoing work with the Pacific region governors. And it has been, it's been an incredible experience to get to learn what everybody around the country is doing, get to be a part of the conversations around how Slow Food is functioning at the national level. You really do get to be that champion for your state and the work that is going on in your state. So if you or anyone that you know are interested in becoming a governor, now would be a great time to get in touch. The governors have spent a great deal of time changing the job description and having it be a really excellent way to participate in the network. So it might be time to reconsider that if you've either never thought about it or have thought about it in the past. And so we won't go through all of the detail in this amendment, since most of it was kind of documented in terms of what the state governors would like to see. But primarily, we are seeing it now being codified that instead of regional governors, we now have state governors, so that people will be located more closely to the communities that they're supporting. They're going to work with our champions, our chapter leaders, and other activities and alliances in the state to organize themselves that as best suits their collective aims. There is some verbiage about what it takes to be eligible to become a state governor. So we're asking that state governors are seasoned slow food leaders who have had at least 3 years of volunteering experience at any level within the slow food network. So it's someone who's stepping into leadership capacity should be familiar with the network that they're going to be supporting. It highlights governors' communication roles, which are becoming increasingly more important, and kind of outlines some of the processes that governors need to go through, again, in these situations of where there might be problems within a chapter, helping them to know how best to navigate those situations, outlining their duties, etc.
I'll also add one quick thing,
okay.
Tiffany.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a line in here for state governor eligibility, just to note that if someone decides to step up as a state governor, they are not necessarily required to step down as chapter leader or board member. We've had many discussions at the governor level about this, but it is encouraged in order to grow local leadership capacity. So if you are a chapter leader who's considering becoming a state governor and going to be elected to that position, you don't have to stop being chapter leader, but in some cases, this can create a model for leadership succession where you groom a new leader to fill your position as chapter leader, and then really the new position as state governor, that really maximizes what that individual can do if they're not straddling both of those roles. But that being said, we have many governors who are also chapter leaders, and it works just fine. So really, it's based on your local needs and capacity.
Definitely. Thank you. That's a great thing to point out, Lauren, because there was a lot of conversation around this, and some people have found that it is more difficult for them to stay connected to the network in the way that they want if they step off entirely. But most people have found that they need to take at least a lesser role in chapter leadership to be able to handle that responsibility. So I'm trying throughout the document to find the places where you can make sure to set good policy, but allow for the flexibility that is necessary to work with a volunteer-run organization. Okay. So as we move past the state governor's duties, again, the next one, the redrafting the definition of the national office to align with the new strategic direction. And there are some very mostly minor changes throughout. You'll notice that the purpose of the national office, there are some things that were added in because of the strategic planning. So it's now to support the health and growth of the slow food network, to provide leadership and a national voice, 3, coordinate national campaigns that exercise our collective power, and 4, organize national gatherings of the slow food network. And then of course 5, serve as a national anchor and organizer for the global slow food movement. So really just trying to codify what we have learned through the strategic planning process, and add in specifically language about campaigns. You'll also notice that on Article 6B, duties of the national office, just language in terms of making sure that the corporation's resources are directed in the implementation of the mission of slow food and in accordance with the Slow Food USA guiding principles, requiring adherence to all of our other governing documents, including our international statute, and adhere to applicable federal, state, local laws including IRS nonprofit regulations. So again, just making sure that we are acting in accordance with all of our international, state, and federal laws. See, there's, again, mostly administrative and language changes and Amendment 10 on the national board. So replacing executive director or state governor, making reference to the Slow Food USA guiding principles. Not really any significant changes there. The last amendment that we have is Amendment 11, which is redrafting the description of the National Congress. So wanted to make sure that it was clear that the intent is to host a national gathering, and that at least every 4 years, one element of that national gathering will be the National Congress. So the language that is in here is, a National Congress shall be held at least every 4 years in conjunction with or separately from a larger annual gathering of the Slow Food Network. The purpose of this Congress is to conduct business, provide the opportunity for peer-to-peer learning amongst leaders, and to promote national and regional networking activities. So the business that we're talking about is can be related to statutory changes, discussing how the organization is working, but making sure that we have a place every 4 years where members and leaders can come together to impact how the organization is run. Not that we're not doing that on a regular basis already. So before each National Congress, it is the Board of Directors, right, to determine the number and distribution of voting delegate spots. And there is a provision that manifests that at least one representative from each active chapter shall be designated a voting delegate. So as we go through and talk about how the voting will happen this year, we'll kind of reference what the different opportunities are to represent yourself as a voting delegate in the upcoming year. With that, I think that we've covered all of the significant amendments. Lauren, was there anything that you thought should be highlighted that I've missed?
No, I think that was great, Tiffany. Thank you so much. I think that most of you, I hope, have caught wind of Slow Food Nations, the big slow food festival and event that we're hosting in Denver, Colorado this summer, July 14th through the 16th. Tiffany's going to talk a little bit more about the voting process, partly of which will occur at the National Congress, which is taking place on the Delegate Summit on Friday, July 14th, as part of Slow Food Nations. So just encouraging and reminding you all to mark your calendars and sign up to be a delegate. And we can either take some questions now, if you have any, in the chat function, or we can move on to the voting process and then take questions at the end. Tiffany, do you have a preference?
I was going to say, why don't I'll just be very brief about the voting process so that then we can take all of the questions at the same time, if you're okay with that.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome. So this call is step 1 in the voting process. As it says in the national statute, we want to ensure that there's a place where leaders can come together and be part of the governance of Slow Food USA at least every 4 years. And having that place where we can be in person and see each other face to face and have the conversations that are important and needed, but also recognize that not everybody can travel to a national event in any given year. So wanted to create a system by which everyone got to have a very transparent understanding of what was going on through the government's documents and the ability to provide feedback whether or not they're able to join us at the National Congress this year in Denver. So the process that has been laid out for voting starts today with this call so that you can see what is happening. And then Lauren will be following up with an email to the same list of people who receive this that includes leaders and members with the draft of the national statute, and also a link to a survey monkey that will allow people to make comments. So that comment period will be open from April 15th to May 15th. So anyone who is a leader or member can come in and give their feedback on what the changes are in the national statute. May 15th, that will close, and then we will review the the comments and the feedback and see if there are any changes that need to be made in between now and the National Congress, between May 15th and mid-June. And then in mid-June, you'll receive an invitation to actually vote on the national statute. And you can do that in one of two ways. You can vote electronically from the comfort of your own home in advance of Slow Food Nations, or you can come to Slow Food Nations and the National Congress and cast your vote in person as a part of that Congress. So the goal is to ratify the new statute at Slow Food Nations, and then it will need to go to the board for approval, which will likely happen at their board meeting in August or September. So we're hopefully creating lots of opportunities for you to give feedback and comments, and a way for every chapter to actually have a voting delegate that participates, whether or not you can travel. So we hope that this process is living up to both the letter of the law and the statute, but the spirit of a more inclusive network.
Thanks, Tiffany. That's a great overview of the voting process. I will just add that in the SurveyMonkey comment link that will go out, there will also be a space not only for you to make your comments and provide feedback, but the Slow Food chapter leader and community leader Facebook group will serve as a platform if there is any part of the statute, any single proposed amendment that you would like to have a larger discussion with other fellow leaders or members. The Slow Food Facebook group for chapter leaders will be the place to have that dialogue. And we will keep track of the conversations happening there and incorporate that feedback into the amending process. So just wanted to add that.
Great, thank you, Lauren.
So I think that we can probably move into Q&A. Let's see, there was a question that came in from Mark Anthony of Slow Food Columbus. What is considered passing for ratification? Is it a certain number or percentage of votes? Tiffany, I'm not sure if you can speak to that.
You know what? I was just going through to look through the statute and see if we actually have that in there. I've been through this so many times, I'm not entirely sure. Let me see here.
I'm not sure. Also, I think we have Charity on the line. Charity, if you know off the top of your head what that is, I would have to look it up and get back to you. I have not participated in a Slow Food USA National Congress before, so I'm not entirely sure, but I can look it up and find out.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that this is Charity. At our National Congress, we had a unanimous approval of all the delegates present at the last National Congress. I don't believe there's anything in the statute, and it's been contemplated that the approval would occur at a Congress. So this great democratic expansion into electronic voting is something that is not currently addressed in the statute.
Thanks, Charity.
So thank you. This is a great way that you guys are already providing feedback. So something to consider if that needs to actually be in the statute, what the percentage was. I think that this is an instance where it's almost always universally ratified. So we should decide if that is a majority or a 2/3, and we will include that.
Do we have any other questions? Zeno asked if the draft of this proposed amendments to the national statute Google Doc that I was screen sharing with you all is available online. And it is. It went out in the couple of emails that were sent out about this national call, but I can also post it on the website and share that link with you all. So it's in the same place as the 2012 last ratified version of the national statute, as well as the Slow Food USA guiding principles, just so you can review this on your own before the comment period. There was another question about, is the term champion an international slow food title? Is it just recognized within the US? This is a title that Slow Food USA came up with. So if you say champions in the international slow food arena, someone may not know exactly what you're talking about, but for the purposes of Slow Food USA, we felt that creating this other organizational entity was important. We have another question that came in from Mark. Is the plan to have future national gatherings something that anyone can join, as was this year, or will there be a move towards applications? So Mark, I think I can speak to that. If many of you on the call have been to Terra Madre, our every 2-year international gathering in Italy, you'll be very familiar with the delegate application process, in which your local chapter may nominate you and you have to apply, and there's a more sort of rigorous application process that's merit-based, where you have to answer questions around your slow food involvement in your community and things like that. I would say, moving forward, that our plan will, for national gatherings, to be more inclusive and to tend to stay in the direction we've shifted in with Slow Food Nations, that we want not just members and leaders, but people who are new to slow food to feel welcome. And I have a feeling we will not adopt the Terra Madre Slow Food International application process for future national gatherings. That is my guess, but we'll have to see how this first sort of reiteration of Slow Food Nations goes this summer, and maybe we'll adjust, but that's what I believe to this point. Zeno has a question. Can you talk to the new place of membership perks, and membership campaigns? Zeno, great question. So, as some of you may have gathered throughout the strategic planning process, not that we're de-emphasizing membership necessarily at the national level, but just with the understanding that we still value members tremendously, as being individuals involved and committed to slow food, and also as a revenue source to keep the organization going. But we also recognize that membership has a changing place in the slow food universe and the larger nonprofit world, meaning that a lot of individuals don't necessarily want to become dues-paying members to an organization, but might rather want to attend events or be social media followers or engage on a different level. So we're still very much promoting membership, but we are trying to take that burden, as Tiffany said, easing that burden from local chapter leadership, so that you all don't have to feel like it is your primary goal as leaders to bring new members into the organization, but to rather have more inclusive events that welcome new individuals. And then ideally, as we get new followers and event attendees, those people will get bought into the idea of slow food, and maybe, in a few months or years, they choose to become members by aligning their financial resources with their values. As far as membership perks, I think we are trying to shift away from this idea of, if you become a member, we will give you swag, we'll give you physical things. We may do some of that in the future. In the past, we've dabbled in providing t-shirts to like mid-level donors. But as far as individual or family memberships, I don't know that we're going in the direction of providing merchandise as incentive to become a member, but rather trying to encourage individuals to become a member because they want to align their finances with their values, if they are able to afford that. As far as membership campaigns, I think we will still continue with the month of September as being our annual membership drive. In the past couple of years, we have provided chapters with the opportunity to get a free kit or membership campaign in a box, so to speak, where we'll provide you with stickers and membership forms and other tabling and outreach materials for you to promote membership in your community. So I think the membership drive in September will continue. but the direction we're moving in nationally is more towards general campaigns. So we are in the midst of a campaign right now. This is our spring campaign around the Arc of Taste and biodiversity. And so Anna Muley, our communications director based in the Brooklyn office, has come up with this great membership campaign box. Excuse me, not membership, it's a campaign box that includes a few packets of Arc of Taste seeds. We have some garden signs. We have a poster that's all sort of custom designed around this idea of plant a seed, defend the future, and our role in promoting biodiversity as a tool for climate resilience. So campaigns will be more open to the public and available again to this new organizational entity known as champions. So individuals that want to be involved with slow food and are not rooted in a chapter, they can engage in a campaign like the spring campaign to be involved with slow food. Zeno, I completely agree that members are mini funders, as you've noted in your chat comment. And members are not going away as part of Slow Food's larger development strategy and fundraising model. But we are just trying to think of other ways to generate revenue, such as through Slow Food Nations. So thank you for that question. We had another question come in. Is this call available to watch again later? Yes, we are recording this and we will post it on the website if you want to, again, review the proposed amendments or listen to the Q&A. Do we have any other questions? We have about 10 more minutes if we want to use it, or we could wrap up early if there are no more questions or comments at this time. Okay, I think we will wrap it up then. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for, we always talk about in Slow Food California, the people who make it up to that level of leadership are the slow food diehards. And I think that if you're joining in call about the national statute, you're definitely demonstrating your diehard status. So thanks for coming and listening to us go through all of those amendments. And looking forward to hearing your feedback and seeing many of you at the National Congress.
I'll add one more quick thing. Sorry. We had a question come in from Teresa about how you can get the spring campaign kits. And I'm just going to go ahead and share. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. I'm going to go to the Slow Food USA website. Can you all see this? I'm typing in my...
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm on the Slow Food USA webpage right now. This is the campaign. It's called Plant a Seed, Defend the Future. And you can actually click right on this link, this big image, and it will bring you to the link to purchase a kit. We also have distributed more than 1,000 seed packets to over 600 school gardens across the country. And so purchasing an Arc of Taste kit also supports the shipping and costs of shipping seeds to schools across the U.S. So that is how you can purchase a kit. And then the link that Tiffany was referencing about documents is under About here on the top navigation bar. And if you go to Governance, and then you go right here, it's called Documents, and I'll click on that. And under here, you can find the current national statute. You can download that version that was ratified in 2012. And then also the guiding principles. You can download this as well. And this is just, I'm not sure if you can see this on my computer, just an excerpt from the chapter leader handbook that just defines what good, clean, and fair means to us. Lastly, I will highlight the chapter handbook as another useful resource. If you click on Get Involved, Leader Resources, on this page of our website, here you can sign up for leader links, you can view past leader calls, and then under chapter administration, we have the chapter handbook. So this is a great PDF, newly revised as of last fall, worked on by one of my interns here in the Denver office. It's really beautifully done and has some content from the national statute, and just a reminder about everything from tips on starting a chapter to using our logo correctly, and tips on social media and outreach and fundraising and accounting requirements and things like that. So I highly encourage you to check out the chapter handbook just as a good refresher about the structure and some of the ways to get involved as a chapter and chapter leader. So I think that if there are no more questions, let's see, I'm just scrolling through. A lot of things just came into the chat function. So before we wrap it up, yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for your positive feedback. It's been such a pleasure working with Tiffany and the rest of the National Statute Working Group to share these really important updates with you all. Thank you so much for your time, for attending. We hope to see many of you at Slow Food Nations in Denver in July. If not, we'll certainly be in touch via email. Thanks again, Tiffany, for leading this call. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Lauren.
Okay, take care, everyone.